Have you ever wondered what years of language learning might look like on paper? Today I'm going to show you. You will see every single of my language journals that I've been collecting and creating for years. So grab a cup of coffee and join me on this little excursion through my language journals. I hope it really inspires you to create something similar for your own language learning journey. And before we get to the journals themselves, let me note something very important. I don't know if there's any official distinction between a language journal and a language notebook. Probably not, but in my head there's a big difference. Don't ask me why, because I have no idea. For me, a language notebook is where I keep my notes on grammar, do some writing, and complete grammar tasks. It's a place where I work with my student book. My language notebook is a sort of a workbook for me, let's put it that way. Meanwhile, a language journal is a sacred place. This is where there are absolutely no borders for my artistic side. My language journals are where my language learning and love for art come together. And this is exactly what I'm going to show you right now. Be ready, because when it comes to language journals, I have a lot. Alright, I guess I'll go in no particular order. I'll just be picking up whatever comes to hand, okay? And it'll be just perfect if we begin with this one, a very precious journal I'm creating that has a special name of a commonplace book, nowadays quite popular. I have a whole video on my channel about how to create one and connect it with language learning, so do watch it later. But in a few words to explain this commonplace book concept, it's a place where you collect everything you like, things that seem important to you to preserve, something you might want to come back to later. So in my case, this journal is where I keep lots of interesting articles from different magazines, some beautiful quotes or poems, and something about the folklore of different countries. This is a commonplace book where I keep all the things I like. Psychology, culture, literature, all the things that interest me. And I'm doing it in all the languages I'm learning. Of course, there are more advanced level pieces in English. When it comes to Spanish and French, there's something more or less intermediate or upper intermediate, and I even have some beginner things in Hindi. If you create your own commonplace book for your target language or languages, it of course doesn't have to be full of drawings, stickers or sketches. That's just because I like it. But in your journal, you can simply copy something that interests you, and that's it. Probably add in mini vocabulary lists with new words or phrases if you want to remember them too. Nowadays, it's easy with the internet to find, well, actually everything. As for me, I really love magazines about psychology, slow living and the like, so I find a lot of things in such magazines. Some of you might know about my love for art through handmade crafts as well, and it might seem almost impossible to connect language learning with handmade crafts, right? But no, it is possible. I have already shown you for sure my favorite magazine on this topic, but I'll do it once more. And now that I actually have a real printed copy in my hands, this magazine is printed in certain countries but not in mine, so this was a very precious gift from my husband and I treasure it so warmly. There are plenty of articles some of you might enjoy as well, so I really recommend this magazine if you think our interests are similar, especially if you live in a country where Daphne's Diaries is available. Okay, now let's have a look at this little journal, and from its cover you can already tell it's related to my French learning, and you'd be right. I started it when I began working with these little books I've got. They contain many stories in French, and as you can see, after each one there is a vocabulary list and topics to reflect on. It was very difficult for me to complete those tasks orally, so I decided I'd better write everything down instead. And to be honest, writing, actually when it comes to any language I've been trying to master, helps me incredibly well. This way I memorize more things and in a much faster and easier way. So this is how this little French journal was born. Then one day I decided it would be a good idea if I also add here something about books in general, some of my thoughts and essays related to reading. You could do something similar with the languages you are learning. If you have a book with short stories, you can turn each story into a whole study session. Even if there are no questions prepared for you and no vocabulary, so what? You just take a pencil or a highlighter and select all the new words and phrases. Then you add them to your journal. After that, you can either retell the story you've read or make up some questions for yourself, or write your thoughts about the main topics brought up in the story, and so on. This is such an amazing language learning activity. It will help you improve both your writing and speaking skills. By the way, all the language journals I've shown you so far were created by me. Everything is handmade, starting with sewing the pages together and finishing with hand-stitched embroidery on the covers. I know that for some people it's not something important and you might prefer writing just in ordinary notebooks, but I'm sure there are those of you who, like me, want to turn a language journal into some special place, especially if you'd like to keep it for years and save it for the future, maybe to show it to your kids, who knows. If you're that kind of person, I'd love to invite you to have a look at my little shop full of handmade journals and notebooks, knitted decorative goods, and embroidered portraits of writers. You can also order a personalized design with your initials, your favorite writer, or any decorative hand-stitched design you'd like. I always care deeply about the quality and energy I put into every item I make for my shop, so be sure that whatever you receive will bring joy to you, your family, and your home. And thank you so much to those of you who already trust the quality of my shop and love everything I make. Your orders are always unique and packed with love and care. If you've been part of LanguageEasy for a while, or if you've been following my Instagram account for some time, then you must already know about these two journals I'm holding. These are the country projects, as I've called them. My UK project and my France project. Let's look inside each of them, and let's begin with my beloved UK project. In general, by a country project, I mean a notebook where I write about the country of the language I'm learning. I began creating my UK project a few years ago when I realized I knew English quite well, but to my own shame, I knew practically nothing about its land. It was then that I started investigating about the UK in general, reading a lot, and finally came to the conclusion I had to write all that, because the UK is so diverse and each part of the country is so unique. This is how I began this journal. I divided it into different parts, starting from England, which I in turn divided into its counties, and went part by part searching for information about the history, traditions, and culture of those places. And since I like drawing, I add my sketches here or sometimes print pictures. This is something that not only broadens my knowledge about the country, which I consider to be essential. We have to know at least the basics about the country whose language we're learning. Not necessarily going as deep as I am, but at least some basic facts of geography and history. But it also allows me to, as I call it, travel on paper. The UK has been my dream for many years, but I haven't visited it yet. Hopefully one day I'll see all those places that I've been drawing and sketching in this journal. But for now, I'm traveling through them and visiting all those places in here. When I finish it all up, I'll create a special cover for it too, of course. By the way, what do you think it should be like? Tell me in the comments. So far, I've completed the England part and now I'm in Scotland, this fascinating land. And by the way, make sure you are subscribed to the channel if you'd like to see how my work in all those language journals is going, which I'm planning to show in my study vlogs. Tell me, by the way, too, in the comments if you'd like to see them. And of course, join the free newsletter on my website to always stay tuned for the new things I upload. And that is basically what I'm doing with my France project. Dream country number 2 in my list. I'm traveling the same way through France as I do through the UK. The fact that the country is divided into regions helps a lot. I simply go region by region, Google it, first read about it in general, maybe highlight something specific that I will definitely write about, mention its main cities, attractions, perhaps some history or other facts, and then I copy it into my journal, of course accompanying it all with my sketches. And I remember once showing my Spain project here as well, which I completed some years ago, but now I'm thinking of making another one with many more places and much more history-related content. I still like this one. It was the first one I completed, but I think I'll create a bigger Spain project in the future. And what about this fatty beauty here? Please welcome another very dear journal of mine, my reading journal. You might have already seen it too, and perhaps you thought I had already finished it, but no, there are still a few pages left, and I'll tell you why in a moment. The story behind this journal is very simple. I love reading, and one day I decided to create a place where I could write about the books I really enjoyed and wanted to remember. Here I add quotes from the books I read, sometimes retell what they were about, and of course it's all about those books that were in the languages I'm learning. Recently I've been reading a lot in my native language, Russian. And by the way, I've created some mini documentaries that you might be interested in. For those books, I made a special separate journals for myself, some of which many of you, by the way, have ordered from my shop too. I hope you really enjoy them. That's why I haven't had time to complete this particular journal yet, but I will soon. Moreover, there are some books that I want to dedicate a special place to. That's exactly what happened with the Canterbury Tales. I created a special notebook dedicated to this literary work. It was actually a long time ago, but I still treasure it, of course, and sometimes I even just take it to look at it and reread. And if I notice any mistakes in it, I prefer not to correct anything. I keep them as a sign of my own progress in the language. Another journal I once showed here is my English history project. This one I'm really proud of, even though it has only just been started and I haven't filled in many things yet. Actually, this journal has been waiting, so to speak, for its time for over a year already, I guess. The thing is that history for me is such a complex and time-consuming, in a good sense of that word, topic that if I were to come back to it now, it would completely take over me and I wouldn't be able to keep doing the things that I have to right now. So I'm waiting for that perfect moment to come back to my history project, English history project, when I have some more free time, and then I'll gladly continue working on it. If history is an interesting topic for you, and if you believe it's important to become familiar with the history of the place where the language you're mastering is spoken, then definitely consider this idea seriously. Don't approach it if it feels like just another task you have to do, but if history in general appeals to you, then such a journal might well become a new hobby you'll truly enjoy. And finally, we come to the bottom of this pile of my language journals, and ironically, I won't be showing you the inside of this one because it contains my personal thoughts that I'd prefer to keep to myself, okay? But I will explain why I believe it's so beneficial and important to have a diary or journal in the language you're learning. First of all, what do we usually write in our diaries? Personal thoughts, reflections on specific things, our emotions, and to be able to write all those things, we need to be able to form clear sentences and be familiar with the everyday vocabulary, isn't it so? That's why keeping a diary in the language you're learning will be so beneficial for you and will really help you improve this ability and expand your vocabulary. If you do not have any idea what to write about, or you don't want to stick to those simple ideas, how was my day, or what are my plans for this summer, even though these topics are perfect for beginners and you'd like to move to another level, so to speak, more advanced level, you could try doing the so-called shadow work, something that more and more people are talking about nowadays. And to tell you the truth, it's amazing to write about your fears, emotions, stress triggers, and so on. You can easily find prompts to help you with this. For example, there are plenty of ideas and questions on Pinterest. And what do I do, by the way, when I don't know certain words or when I struggle with a sentence that I can't properly translate from my native language into the foreign one? I simply use an online translator. Don't be afraid to do that. You are learning a whole new language. And besides, sometimes, even in our native language, we forget words or don't know how to form a sentence beautifully. An online translator is a wonderful tool we're lucky to have nowadays. A word you look up today might seem unfamiliar, but tomorrow or the day after tomorrow, you'll memorize it and it will stay with you forever. And finally, Keeping such a journal is really helpful for your mind, I would say. It's as if you're talking to your inner self. You might save this journal for the future and see how you've changed. And if you'd like to have your thoughts recorded in a special place, in a notebook with a unique design, make sure to have a look at my shop and order a personalized design. So that must be about it. Even though I think I might be missing something, I really hope I've managed to show you all of the main of my language journals, and I hope that something inspired you to create something similar for your own language learning journey. I've actually myself been into journaling since my childhood, and this is my first ever journal which I made when I was a kid. This is the first time I'm showing it. At that time, I wasn't even sure what exactly I was doing. I just wanted to create a place where I could collect beautiful and interesting things that meant a lot to me when I was a kid. And I'm so glad now that I was later able to connect it to language learning, which you can do too. If this video seemed worth watching to you, give it a like please, and let me know in the comments which of my language journals you liked the most and why, and what you're planning to create yourself. Can't wait to hear from you and hope to see you here again in the next video. Till the next time.